Kim Jong-un's latest threat toward the U.S. focuses primarily on the territory of Guam. The regime's military has plans in place to launch 4 missiles toward the island later this month. President Trump says that test would be met with unprecedented force. Guam has about 6,000 U.S. troops stationed there. The overall population is more than 160,000 people. CBS News is the only network to gain access to Andersen Air Force Base. And Vladimir Duthiers was there for CBSN on assignment to see the preparations for a potential clash with North Korea.
We've arrived here at Andersen Air Force Base in Guam. This wing is considered a power projection platform. We're about 2,100 miles away from North Korea, but that doesn't really matter because this base can accept assets from anywhere in the world and launch them and take the fight to our enemies.
This base has the largest stockpile of fuel and munitions in the Air Force and can respond to threats from the Middle East, Asia, and across the Pacific. Colonel Sam White has spent his career here among these bombers.
In a worst-case scenario, how quickly can this airfield get up to speed?
So we stand ready to respond to a wide range of things at the president's call. That's the reason why we have the continuous power of the president's mission, is to give the president of the United States sovereign options against threats to the U.S. So we're ready today.
And they've had to prove that multiple times in recent weeks. On July 29th, the day after North Korea's latest successful ICBM launch, 2 U.S. B-1 bombers took off from this airfield and flew over 2,000 miles to the North Korean border in a show of force. The B-1, also known as the Bone, is capable of carrying more arms than any other bomber in the Air Force. And as its air crews can attest, it's also among the loudest.
Especially being out here because you get to feel the rumble of them. Wow.
When a B-1 goes into a particular region, it sends a very strong message that the United States means business.
Well, our first step is deterrence, obviously. However, if the combatant commander calls upon us, the B-1 is a very credible and lethal force.
What sets the Bone apart?
I think it's 3 things, and it's all 3 of them together: speed, persistence, and payload. So we can get where we're going fast, we can then stay there for a long time, and we bring a lot of bombs with us.
You're looking at what airmen call haze igloos, stretching along this road for about half a mile. 15 million pounds of net explosive conventional munitions. They're built by the 36th Munitions Squadron.
Each of these bombs weigh 2,000 pounds. We generally crank each one of these out in about 8 minutes time.
8 minutes time?
Yes, sir.
You can build one of these?
Yes, sir.
And which one are we building today?
It's an advanced penetrator, often referred to as a bunker buster. It can actually penetrate concrete, reinforced even.
What kind of force are we talking about? When we say, 2,000 pounds, what kind of devastation are we looking at?
If anything ever goes wrong for these, we always play on the realm of safety, evacuate 4,000 feet.
4,000 feet?
Yes, sir.
Due to North Korea's difficult mountainous terrain and deep bunkers, these types of munitions could be of vital importance in the event of a conflict.
Vlad joins me now. Boy, Vlad, I know that you guys shot this before the rhetoric really sort of went haywire, but the timing could not have been perfect. This is all we're talking about now. How did the assignment come about?
Back in January, after President Trump was inaugurated, we knew, in fact, even before the inauguration, that when he met with President Obama in the Oval Office, that reports from our White House correspondents, Major Garrett and Margaret Brennan and others, was that President Obama said, look, the most challenging aspect of your presidency in the months and years ahead will be North Korea. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed in the United States, but this is going to prove to be a very difficult challenge. So from the very beginning, myself and Moshe Wanunu, who's the executive producer, and Lulu Chang and Javier Guzman, all the people who are responsible for CBSN on assignment, started talking about how could we tell this story. And Lulu Chang reached out to the United States Air Force and other services and said, look, we really want to tell the story of what America is doing to prepare for potential conflict if it should ever come. And Lulu kept pushing, and eventually we were able to get the access. And then myself, Julian Quinones, and Russell Midori, just the 3 of us. I mean, when you look at how well this piece is shot, it was really just Julian and Russell with GoPros and handheld cameras getting us into that perspective that you look down on the B-1 bomber is us shooting down from that open bay area of the KC-135. And so the Air Force was very open with us. They recognize, I think, the United States Air Force and all the services recognize that they are there to serve the American people, and for the American people to have a good insight into what they're doing, the tools at their disposal. They felt that it was okay to give us the very, very rare access. They don't do this for everybody, but they did it with us.
How do they feel? I know this was shot earlier, but things were getting heated. How do they feel about the way the conversation was headed between the United States and North Korea?
Generally, in fact, not generally, specifically, none of the airmen and sailors that we spoke to feel anything other than they are prepared to do the job should they be called upon to do it. When I interviewed General T.J. O'Shaughnessy, who's the head of Pacific Air Force in Hawaii, he essentially said, look, we train every single day for a potential conflict. No one wants it. No one wants to see it. In fact, part of the training is preventative. It's to show that we are ready to fight today, tonight, this minute, if it should ever come down to that. But the rhetoric that happens in Washington, all the back and forth between President Trump and Kim Jong-un and others, doesn't affect these guys. They stay the same. They do their jobs. They do it with pride. They do it with discipline. And that ranges from the youngest airman who just got out of basic training to the senior leadership. In this case, we interviewed Admiral Harry Harris, who's the head of Pacific Command. So all of the Pacific forces in the theater have the same attitude about that. Ready to fight tonight, but nobody wants it.
Right, dedicated to the mission. According to the plans that North Korea has, it would take 17 minutes and 45 seconds for them to get a missile close to Guam. Are the people that you spoke to, are they confident that we could intercept that missile? How long would it take them?
There are certain aspects of the discussions that we had with the senior leadership that are classified, and so they wouldn't give us too many details about what they could potentially do in the event of a strike like that. I can tell you that, as I said, it's interesting. When we were in South Korea, it's one aspect of the story that we didn't focus too much on, but what we did learn through our reporting is that generally South Koreans, for example, are not as stressed, as worried about Kim Jong-un in perhaps the way Americans are. And I don't know if that's because the rhetoric that is used is occasionally inflammatory, but they've lived with that since the cessation of hostilities between the North and the South, and life goes on for them. They're worried about falling in love and getting a job and what they're going to do on the weekends than really what's happening, just a couple of miles away across the DMZ. And that's probably a lesson for us too, because in speaking to General O'Shaughnessy, I asked him to provide a message to the families here in the United States and also to the families of service members who are a little worried.
I'm very curious what he had to say, because I was thinking, a lot of people, when they heard the president talk, a lot of people liked what they heard, but a lot of people got worried. And today he used the phrase locked and loaded.
Right.
He sort of anteed up. So tell me something that will make us feel at ease.
So believe it or not, when the president, in the most recent comments that he delivered about being locked and loaded on Twitter, he did that this morning, Friday, that wasn't surprising to me. In fact, he's right. They are locked and loaded, but they were locked and loaded last week. They were locked and loaded when we were there 3 weeks ago. They've been locked and loaded since the end of the Korean War, which actually hasn't really ended technically, right? They are locked and loaded, ready to go. They understand that the training that they do is in the eventuality that they are called upon to respond to a threat. But they don't want one. They recognize that this is the job that they do. And so I don't think it's that big of a deal for them to think that people are saying things and expecting them to react to that. They're just ready to do the job should it ever come down. They always said, everybody said to me, from, as I said, the senior leadership down to the youngest airman, ready to take the fight north. Tonight, right now, if we need to, and so that's how they feel. And I'll say one other thing: we did obviously interact with a lot of officers, a lot of pilots who get to fly those very cool aircraft, which we should never forget are actually instruments of war. They're beautiful, they're amazing to look at. I got to ride in the backseat of an F-16, which was incredible. But these are weapons, and they're used to kill. They take the officers consistently to me said, hey, talk to that young airman who just got out of basic, or talk to the young airman who's responsible for ensuring that these munitions get built, because talk to the maintenance guy who sometimes has more pride of ownership over the F-16 or the B-1 bomber than the pilots themselves. In fact, there was one young airman who gave myself, Russell, and Julian we probably know more about hydraulic fluid than
Right.
I think I ever care to know. But he gave us a whole discourse on hydraulic fluid. Why was it important for us to talk to him? Because that's what he does every single day. He's got to make sure that that B-1 is functional, and his job is hydraulic fluids, and so he knows everything there is to know about it, and that's how that plane gets in the air.
Well, Vlad, looking forward to this. Like I said before, the timing could not have been better. I think a lot of people want to know, how are we prepared? Vladimir Duthiers, thanks for coming by. Come by
you.
again maybe next week. Remember
Maybe I'll
we
come
used to
by.
work together for
I'll
a
be
while?
back with you, Anne-Marie,
Yeah.
from Monday. My duties of CBS This Morning have ended. Nora, Gail, and Charlie are back next week, so it's
All right.
me and you.
Yeah, don't get too comfortable over here. This is where you belong, right beside me. You can watch Vlad's full report on the next CBSN On Assignment. It actually airs Monday night at 10, 9 Central on CBS, and it streams on CBSN.